12 hours to save a fortune, and Marcus Chun was about to lose everything. Until a janitor with calloused hands and a daughter waiting at home glanced at the broken screen and whispered 4 words that changed everything: the countdown clock. In the corner of TechFlow Industries' main monitor read 11 hours, 47 minutes, and 32 seconds, and dropping. 11 hours until the Dubai presentation. 11 hours until the biggest client in company history either signed or walked away forever. And their revolutionary payment system, 3 years in development, kept crashing every 7 minutes like clockwork. Victoria Sterling stood at the head of the glass conference room, her silver hair pulled into a sharp bun, watching her team of 20 engineers stare at error codes that made no sense. Outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, the city sparkled in the pre-dawn darkness, oblivious to the crisis unfolding 30 floors up. "Status report," she said, her voice cutting through the frustrated murmurs. "Same result," called out Marcus. Chun, lead developer, is usually pristine button-down, now wrinkled and coffee-stained. "The system handles small transactions perfectly, but the moment we scale up to enterprise level..." He gestured helplessly at the screen where red error messages cascaded like digital rain. Victoria's jaw tightened. Tomorrow's presentation to Apex Financial wasn't just another pitch. It was survival. 6 months of delayed launches, 2 major competitors breathing down their necks, and a board of directors already sharpening their knives. This payment system had to work. Had to. "Sir," a quiet voice from the hallway caught everyone's attention. In the doorway stood a man in a faded gray uniform, pushing a cart loaded with cleaning supplies. Late 30s, kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses, the sort of person who moved through corporate buildings like a ghost. His name tag read Danny Martinez, night maintenance. "Sorry to interrupt," Danny said softly. "Just need to empty the trash bins. Won't take but a minute." Victoria waved him in impatiently, already turning back to the screens. But Marcus noticed something odd. The janitor's eyes weren't on the trash cans. They were fixed on the massive display showing their broken code. His head tilted slightly, like he was listening to music only he could hear. Danny moved efficiently around the room, collecting waste, wiping down surfaces. But at each workstation, he paused just a fraction longer than necessary, his gaze drifting to the monitors. When he reached Marcus's desk, he stopped entirely. "Excuse me," Danny said quietly, "but that sequence there, lines 847 through 851, that's a recursive loop, isn't it?" The room went silent. Every head turned toward the janitor, who wasn't supposed to understand what recursive loops were, let alone identify them in enterprise-level code. Marcus blinked hard, then looked at his screen. "Ah, yes. Yes, it is. But that's not the problem. The loop is supposed to handle transaction verification," Danny finished gently. "But you're calling the validation function inside itself without a proper exit condition when the load exceeds threshold parameters. Before we dive deeper into this moment that's about to change everything, tell us where you're watching from today and when this story ends. Don't forget to rate it from 0 to 10, because what happens next defies every assumption about who gets to be the hero." Victoria Sterling had built her career on reading people in milliseconds. The pause before a lie, the confidence behind a handshake, the competence hidden beneath appearances. But standing in her crisis-filled conference room at 4:23 a.m., watching a janitor explain enterprise software architecture to her lead engineer, she felt every assumption she'd ever made begin to crack. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice carefully controlled. "Could you repeat that?" Danny Martinez looked up from Marcus's workstation, his cleaning cloth still in one hand. "The recursive validation loop," he said simply. "It's creating an infinite callback when transaction volumes hit your upper threshold. The system keeps asking itself for permission to ask for permission." Marcus leaned forward, his exhaustion temporarily forgotten. "How could you possibly know that?" A shadow crossed Danny's face, so quick Victoria almost missed it. I used to code. Long time ago." He resumed, wiping down the desk, movements suddenly mechanical. "Before my daughter needed me more than I needed debugging." "What kind of coding?" Victoria pressed. "Financial systems. Payment processing, specifically." Danny's voice grew quieter. "MIT, class of 2019. Was supposed to start at Goldman Sachs, but..." He trailed off, glancing at his phone where a photo of a sleeping little girl smiled back at him. The conference room air seemed to thicken. 20 engineers who'd spent 3 days chasing ghost errors suddenly felt very small. "Show me," Victoria said. Danny hesitated, cloth frozen mid-wipe. "Ma'am, I don't want to overstep. Show me what you see." With careful movements, Danny approached the main display. Marcus handed him a tablet, their eyes meeting in a moment of professional recognition that transcended job titles and uniforms. Danny's fingers moved across the screen with the fluid precision of someone who thought in code. "Here," he said, highlighting a section. "Your validation function calls itself recursively to handle fraud detection on large transactions." But look, he traced a path through the logic. When the system processes more than 10,000 simultaneous requests, it creates a feedback loop. Each transaction waits for validation from the previous one, but the previous one is still waiting for validation from the one before that. The room held its breath. It's like a line of people all asking the person behind them for permission to move forward. Danny continued. "Nobody can move because everybody's waiting." Marcus's hands flew across his keyboard, running Danny's hypothesis through their testing environment. The simulation loaded. 1,000 transactions, smooth. 5,000 transactions, perfect. 10,000 transactions. The system crashed exactly as Danny had predicted. "Jesus," someone whispered, but Danny wasn't finished. "The fix is simple. You need a circuit breaker, a condition that forces the loop to exit after a set number of iterations. Change line 851 from a recursive call to a return statement when validation attempts exceed 5 cycles." Marcus made the adjustment, fingers trembling slightly. They ran the test again. 10,000 transactions. 50,000, 100, 000. Green lights across the board. Victoria stared at the screen, then at Danny, then back at the screen. 3 years of development. Hundreds of thousands of dollars in consulting fees. A team of MIT and Stanford graduates working around the clock for 6 months. Fixed by a janitor in 17 minutes. "What's your daughter's name?" she asked suddenly. Danny looked surprised. "Sophia. She's 8. What does she think you do for work?" A soft smile crossed his face. "She thinks I'm a superhero who fights mess monsters at night, so kids can learn in clean schools during the day." He paused. "She's not wrong." Victoria felt something shift inside her chest, a recognition she couldn't quite name. "Mr. Martinez, what time does Sophia wake up for school?" 7:30. "What?" "Because you're not going home tonight. You're staying here, and we're going to fix everything else that's broken." Danny's eyes widened. "Ma'am, I can't." "You can, and you will." "Marcus, call Sophia's school. Tell them she'll be a few hours late today. Tell them her father is saving our company." But even as the words left her mouth, Victoria knew this was about more than saving TechFlow Industries. She was watching something rare unfold. The moment when hidden brilliance finally found its spotlight. And in the corner of the room, Marcus Chin smiled for the first time in weeks because he recognized the look in his CEO's eyes. It was the same look Danny had when he talked about fighting mess monsters for his daughter. That IT was the look of someone who'd just found their missing piece. The cafeteria at TechFlow Industries wasn't built for pre-dawn strategy sessions, but by 6 a.m. it had transformed into an unlikely war room. Danny Martinez sat across from Victoria Sterling, 2 coffee cups and a tablet between them, while Marcus paced nearby, occasionally stopping to stare at code that finally made sense. "Tell me about MIT," Victoria said, breaking the comfortable silence that had settled over their makeshift workspace. Danny's fingers traced the edge of his coffee cup. "Full scholarship. Top of my algorithms class. Professor Kowalski used to say I had an intuitive understanding of how systems wanted to behave." He smiled wryly. "Funny thing about intuition, it doesn't pay rent." "What changed?" "Sarah, my wife, she got sick during my senior year. Lupus. The medical bills started piling up faster than I could process financial aid applications." Danny's voice remained steady, but his knuckles went white around the cup. "Had to choose between finishing my degree and being the husband and father my family needed." Victoria leaned forward. "That must have been impossible." "No," Danny said quietly. "It was the easiest decision I ever made. Sophia was 3. She needed her dad more than the world needed another software engineer." From across the cafeteria, Marcus called out, "Danny, Can you look at this authentication module? Something's not sitting right. Danny stood, but Victoria caught his arm gently. After we fix the system, she said, we need to talk about your future here. Ma'am, I appreciate the thought, but I have a good thing going. Regular hours, health benefits, time with Sophia. I'm not talking about taking anything away. I'm talking about giving you what you've earned. Before Danny could respond, Marcus's voice cracked across the room with barely controlled excitement. You guys need to see this. Now, they hurried over to find Marcus staring at his laptop screen, a strange mix of wonder and disbelief on his face. I ran Danny's fix through our full testing suite. Not just the payment processing, everything. User authentication, data encryption, load balancing. He turned the screen toward them. Every test showed green. Perfect scores across the board. That's impossible, Victoria breathed. We've been fighting these systems for months. That's what I thought, Marcus said. So I dug deeper. Danny, that recursive loop fix, it didn't just solve the payment processing issue. It created a cascade effect. The system was compensating for that bottleneck by overloading other processes. When you eliminated the bottleneck, everything else fell into optimal configuration. Danny finished, understanding dawning on his face. Like removing a traffic jam. Once the cars can flow naturally again, the whole highway system works better. Victoria stood very still, processing the implications. You're telling me that one fix resolved 6 months of development issues? I'm telling you, Marcus said, his voice filled with something approaching awe, that Danny just turned our decent payment system into the most efficient enterprise platform I've ever seen. The cafeteria fell silent except for the hum of the coffee machine and the distant sound of early commuters beginning their day outside. Danny sank into a chair, overwhelmed. I saw a pattern. That's all. No, Victoria said firmly. You saw what 20 brilliant engineers missed because they were looking at trees instead of the forest. You saw the system as a living thing instead of a collection of functions. Her phone buzzed. A text from her assistant. Apex Financial. Team just landed. Presentation moved up to 10 a.m. They want to see a live demo. Victoria looked at the clock. 7:15 a.m. 3 hours, she said aloud. Marcus paled. We need at least 6 hours to prepare a proper demo environment. No, we don't. Victoria's voice carried a new certainty. We're going to show them the system exactly as it is. Danny, I need you to stay. I can't. Sophia's morning routine. Bring her here. Danny stared at her. Excuse me. Bring Sophia here. She can sit in my office, play games on my tablet, eat breakfast from our executive kitchen. This is bigger than a presentation. Danny, this is the moment your daughter gets to see her superhero dad save the day in front of people who matter. For a long moment, nobody moved. Then Danny pulled out his phone. Sophia, his voice softened. Instantly. Hey, sweetheart. Remember how Daddy fights mess monsters? Well, today the monsters are extra big, and I need my lucky charm with me. As Danny explained the situation to his daughter, Victoria caught Marcus's eye. The young engineer looked like someone watching a miracle unfold in real time. She said, Yes, Danny announced, ending the call. But she wants to bring Mr. Whiskers. Mr. Whiskers? Victoria asked. Her stuffed dragon. She says he's good at helping with big, scary things. Victoria smiled, the first genuine smile she'd worn in months. Then Mr. Whiskers is welcome too. Outside the windows, the sun climbed higher, casting long golden rays across the cafeteria where a CEO, an engineer, and a janitor prepared to change everything they thought they knew about success. But none of them knew that by noon. The entire tech industry would be talking about what happened in TechFlow's conference room that morning. Victoria Sterling had faced hostile takeover attempts, federal regulatory investigations, and board meetings that felt like gladiator fights. But she'd never been nervous about a little girl with a stuffed dragon. Yet at 8:30 a.m., watching Sophia Martinez skip through TechFlow's marble lobby, clutching her father's hand and a purple plush toy, Victoria felt her palms grow damp. The elevators talk, Sophia announced as they stepped inside, pressing her ear to the wall. They're saying good morning to each other. Danny smiled apologetically. She thinks everything has feelings. Maybe they do, Victoria found herself saying. Then wondered where that thought had come from. In Victoria's corner office, Sophia made herself at home with the confidence of someone who'd never learned to doubt her welcome. She arranged Mr. Whiskers on the leather couch, pulled out a coloring book, and looked around with bright curiosity. You have a very big desk, Sophia observed. Do you fight very big mess monsters? Victoria glanced at Danny, who nodded encouragingly. Sometimes, Victoria said carefully. Different kinds of monsters than your dad fights. Like what? Well, there are monsters made of numbers that don't add up right. And monsters made of people saying mean things about our company. And monsters made of being scared that I'm not good enough to help everyone who depends on me. Sophia considered this seriously. Those sound scarier than regular monsters. They are. Is that why Daddy's helping? Because he's really good at monster fighting. Before Victoria could answer, Marcus burst through the office door, tablet in hand, and excitement radiating from every pore. We have a problem, he announced. A good problem, but still a problem. Victoria raised an eyebrow. Elaborate. I just ran our performance metrics against industry standards. Danny's optimization didn't just fix our system. It made it perform 300% better than anything else on the market. Danny looked up from the code he'd been reviewing. That can't be right. It is right. Transaction processing speed, security verification, load handling. We're not just competitive anymore. We're revolutionary. Victoria felt the ground shift beneath her feet. What are you saying? I'm saying, Marcus continued, that what we're about to demo to Apex Financial isn't just a working payment system. It's a paradigm shift. We're about to show them technology that could change how every major corporation handles digital transactions. The office fell silent except for Sophia's crayon scratching across her coloring book. Oh, Sophia said matter-of-factly, not looking up from her drawing. Daddy always makes things better than they were before. That's what superheroes do. Victoria's phone rang. Her assistant's voice crackled through the speaker. Miss Sterling? The Apex team is here. They're requesting to start the presentation immediately. Victoria checked the clock. 9:15 a.m. They'd gained 45 minutes, but lost any buffer for nerves. Send them to conference room A, she said. We'll be there in 5 minutes. As her assistant confirmed the message, Victoria turned to Danny. You ready for this? No, he said honestly. But Sophia's here, so I can't mess up too badly. Good thing, Sophia piped up, holding up her coloring book, because I drew you a picture for luck. Danny knelt beside the couch to look. Sophia had drawn 3 stick figures standing in front of a computer. A tall woman with yellow hair, a medium man with glasses, and a tiny girl with purple crayon scribbles that must have been Mr. Whiskers. Above them, in careful letters, she'd written, Daddy's team. We're a team? Victoria asked softly. Sophia nodded sagely. The best teams have different kinds of people who are all good at different things. Daddy's good at fixing. You're good at being brave. And I'm good at. She paused thoughtfully. At. Remembering that grown-ups are still people, even when they wear fancy clothes. Victoria looked at Danny, then at the little girl who somehow understood more about leadership than most executives she knew. Marcus, she said, her voice steady with new resolve, you're going to run the technical demonstration. Danny, you're going to explain the system architecture. And I'm going to tell them exactly how this breakthrough happened. The truth, Danny asked. The whole truth. That a janitor saw what 20 engineers missed. That brilliance doesn't come with prerequisites. That the best solutions often come from the people everyone else overlooked. Danny swallowed hard. They might not like that story. Then they're not the right clients for us, Victoria replied, surprising herself with how much she meant it at AS. They gathered their materials and headed toward the door. Sophia called out, Wait. She ran over and pressed her drawing into Victoria's hands. For extra luck. And remember, mess monsters are always bigger and scarier before you turn on the lights. Walking down the hallway toward conference room A, Victoria realized she wasn't nervous anymore. She was carrying a child's drawing, flanked by a janitor and an engineer, about to stake her company's future on the most unconventional partnership in corporate history. And for the first time in her career, that felt exactly right. Conference room A had never felt smaller. 5 executives from Apex Financial sat along one side of the mahogany table, their suits crisp, their expressions neutral, their reputation for walking away from deals preceding them like a cold wind. At the head of the table, Jonathan Apex himself, billionaire, kingmaker, and the man who could single-handedly make or break tech flow industries with one decision. Victoria Sterling took her place at the presentation podium, acutely aware of Danny Martinez standing quietly near the back wall, still wearing his maintenance uniform. Marcus had set up the technical demonstration, but Victoria could see the sweat beading on his forehead despite the aggressive air conditioning. "Gentlemen," Victoria began, "thank you for accommodating our earlier start time. I know you have other meetings today, so let's begin with a live demonstration of our payment processing system." Jonathan Apex glanced at his watch, a gesture that somehow managed to communicate both impatience and skepticism. "Ms. Sterling, we've seen 3 competing presentations this week. All of them promised revolutionary technology. All of them failed to deliver when we stress-tested their systems. Why should yours be different?" Victoria felt the familiar tightness in her chest, the weight of 300 employees' livelihoods, pressing down on her shoulders. "Because, Mr. Apex, our breakthrough came from the most unexpected source." She nodded to Marcus, who began running the demonstration. Transaction volumes climbed on the main screen: 10,000, 50,000, 100,000 simultaneous processes. Green lights across the board. Perfect performance metrics. One of the Apex executives leaned forward. "Impressive baseline, but let's see how it handles real stress. Push it to 500,000 transactions," Jonathan commanded. Marcus's hands trembled as he input the parameters. This was beyond anything they'd tested. The system could crash spectacularly in front of the most important client in company history. The numbers climbed. 200,000, 300,000, 400, 000. Still green. 500, 000 transactions processed simultaneously. 0 errors. 0 delays. Performance metrics that defied industry standards. The room fell silent. "That's not possible," one of the Apex team whispered. "It is possible," Victoria said, her voice gaining strength, "because sometimes genius hides in plain sight." She gestured toward Danny. 3 days ago, that man was emptying trash cans in this building. Yesterday, he solved a problem that had stumped our entire development team for 6 months. The Apex executives turned to stare at Danny, who suddenly looked like he wanted to disappear through the floor. Jonathan Apex's expression hardened. "Are you telling me that your revolutionary payment system was debugged by a janitor?" The way he said the word, janitor, made it sound like something distasteful. Victoria felt the room's energy shift, becoming hostile, dismissive. This was the moment she'd feared, when the truth would become a liability rather than an asset. "I'm telling you," she said carefully, "that breakthrough innovation comes from fresh perspectives, regardless of job titles." "Ms. Sterling," Jonathan said, his voice cutting, "Apex Financial manages over $200 billion in assets. Our clients are Fortune 100 companies who expect solutions developed by credentialed professionals with proven track records. They don't expect." He gestured dismissively toward Danny. "Maintenance staff playing with enterprise software." Victoria felt the presentation slipping away. "Mr. Apex, if I may." "No, you may not." Jonathan stood up, his team following suit. "This is exactly the kind of unprofessional approach that concerns our risk management department." "A janitor? Really?" Danny stepped forward, his voice quiet but clear. "Sir, with respect, I graduated summa cum laude from MIT's computer science program. I was recruited by Goldman Sachs before family circumstances required me to pursue other opportunities." Jonathan paused, a flicker of surprise crossing his face. "MIT?" "Yes, sir. I specialized in algorithmic optimization and financial systems. Architecture. The solution I implemented yesterday represents 3 years of pattern recognition experience across your industry. But you're working as a janitor." "I'm working as a father," Danny replied simply. "My daughter needed stability and health insurance more than I needed a prestigious job title. But competence doesn't disappear based on uniform color." The conference room felt electric with tension. Victoria realized this was the crucial moment, not just for the deal, but for everything TechFlow represented. "Mr. Apex," she said, "you asked why our system should be different. It's not just because it works better than anything else on the market. It's because it was built by people who understand that intelligence comes in many forms, and that the best solutions often come from the most unexpected places." Jonathan studied Danny for a long moment. "Run the demonstration again. 750,000 transactions." Marcus's face went pale, but he input the numbers. This time, they all held their breath. 750,000 simultaneous transactions. The system hummed along perfectly, processing everything in real time with zero errors and performance metrics. That seemed almost supernatural. Impossible, one of the Apex executives breathed. No, said a small voice from the doorway. Just really, really good. Every head turned to see Sofia Martinez peeking around the door frame, Mr. Whiskers clutched in one arm. Somehow she'd wandered from Victoria's office to find them. Sophia, Danny said gently, you shouldn't be here, sweetheart. But you're doing superhero work, she said matter-of-factly, walking over to stand beside her father. And superheroes work better when people believe in them. She looked up at Jonathan Apex with the fearless curiosity of an 8-year-old. Are you the boss man who decides if Daddy gets to keep helping people? Jonathan stared down at her, clearly thrown off balance by this tiny person who didn't understand power dynamics or intimidation. I suppose I am. Sophia nodded seriously. Good. Because Daddy makes everything better. That's what he does. And everyone should get to see how good he is at it. The room fell silent. Jonathan looked from Sophia to Danny to the impossibly perfect performance metrics still glowing on the screen. Then, for the first time since entering the room, he smiled. Miss Sterling, he said slowly, I think we need to discuss terms. The contract negotiation lasted 4 hours, but Sofia Martinez turned it into the most unconventional corporate meeting in TechFlow's history. While lawyers debated licensing terms and revenue splits, she sat cross-legged on the conference room carpet, building an elaborate Lego castle with pieces Victoria had rushed to buy from the building's gift shop. The towers need to be different heights, Sophia explained seriously to Jonathan Apex during a break in the discussions, because that's how you know everyone belongs, even if they're not exactly the same. Jonathan, who'd built a financial empire through ruthless negotiation tactics, found himself sitting on the floor, helping an 8-year-old construct fortifications for her toy dragon. Your daughter is remarkable, he said quietly to Danny. She gets that from her mother, Danny replied, watching Sophia carefully place a tiny knight next to Mr. Whiskers. Sarah always saw the best in people, no matter where they came from or what they did for work. Victoria studied Danny's face as he mentioned his late wife. She'd been noticing the small things all day, how his voice softened when he spoke about family, how his eyes lit up when explaining complex algorithms, how he moved through spaces like someone accustomed to being invisible but never quite comfortable with it. Danny, she said during a lull in the contract review, I meant what I said earlier about discussing your future here. Ms. Sterling, I appreciate everything that's happened today, but, Chief Technology Officer, she interrupted. The room went silent. Even Sophia looked up from her castle. Excuse me, Danny asked. Chief Technology Officer. Full salary, equity package, executive benefits, flexible schedule to accommodate Sophia's needs. Victoria's voice was steady, certain. You've just revolutionized financial processing technology. You've earned the title that matches your contribution. Danny stared at her, overwhelmed. I don't have the degree, the formal experience. You have something better, Jonathan Apex interjected unexpectedly. You have vision, and you have the respect of everyone in this room. He gestured toward the contract pages spread across the table. Ms. Sterling, Apex Financial is prepared to sign an exclusive 5-year partnership worth $200 million. But we have one condition. Victoria tensed, which is, Mr. Martinez leads the technical implementation team. We want the man who created this system to be the one ensuring it stays revolutionary. Danny looked around the room, at Victoria, who'd taken an impossible risk on him, at Marcus, who'd treated him as an equal from the moment they'd met, at Sophia, who'd never doubted her daddy was capable of miracles. I accept, he said quietly, on one condition of my own. Name it, Victoria said. Sophia gets to visit the office whenever she wants. And if she's here past dinner time, someone has to help me figure out how to order food that doesn't come from a vending machine. The room erupted in laughter, tension finally breaking like a fever. Deal, Victoria said, extending her hand for a handshake that felt more like the beginning of something than the end of a negotiation. The Apex team prepared to leave. Jonathan knelt beside Sophia one more time. What do you think, young lady? Will your dad be happy working here? Sophia considered this with the seriousness of a Supreme Court justice. He's always happy when he gets to fix things that are broken. And this place had lots of broken things. But now, she gestured around the room. Now it feels like somewhere good people work. Jonathan stood up, straightening his tie. Miss Sterling, in 30 years of business, I've never made a decision based on the recommendation of an 8-year-old. And best choice I've ever made. After the Apex team left, Victoria found herself alone in the conference room with Danny and Sophia. The contract papers lay scattered across the table, proof that their impossible day had actually happened. So, Victoria said, sitting down beside Sophia's Lego castle, what do we do now? Now, Sophia announced, we celebrate. With ice cream. And Daddy has to tell you about the time he fixed the broken washing machine with a paperclip and a song. Danny laughed, ruffling his daughter's hair. I think Miss Sterling might have more important things to do than listen to my greatest hits in appliance repair. Actually, Victoria said, surprising herself, I can't think of anything more important than that story. As Danny began explaining the great laundromat crisis of 2023, complete with sound effects provided by Sophia, Victoria realized something profound had shifted. For the first time in her corporate career, she wasn't thinking about quarterly reports or board meetings or competitive advantages. She was thinking about belonging, about the difference between being successful and being fulfilled, about how a little girl's wisdom could reshape an entire company culture in the span of a single afternoon. Outside the conference room windows, the sun was setting over a city that had no idea 3 lives had just been fundamentally changed by the power of unexpected partnership. But in the warm glow of the conference room lights, surrounded by Lego towers and the echo of genuine laughter, Victoria Sterling finally understood what it meant to build something that mattered. 3 months later, TechFlow Industries' quarterly all-hands meeting looked nothing like the sterile corporate gatherings Victoria Sterling used to dread. The main auditorium buzzed with energy as 300 employees filed in, many of them stopping to admire the science fair display Sofia Martinez had set up near the entrance. How computers learn to be friends, complete with hand-drawn diagrams. And a working model built from Legos and Christmas lights. Victoria stood at the podium, looking out at faces that seemed brighter somehow, more engaged than she remembered from previous meetings. In the front row, Danny sat with Sophia on his lap, both of them wearing matching TechFlow Innovators t-shirts that Sophia had designed herself. Before we begin, Victoria said, her voice carrying to the back of the auditorium, I want to share some numbers with you. The screen behind her lit up with charts and graphs, but these weren't the usual quarterly metrics. Customer satisfaction, up 340%. Employee retention, up 89%. New product innovations, up 200%. She paused, letting the numbers sink in. Revenue growth, up 500%. The auditorium erupted in applause, but Victoria held up a hand for silence. Those numbers are impressive, but they don't tell the real story. The real story is about what happens when we stop assuming we know where good ideas come from. She gestured toward Danny. 3 months ago, our chief technology officer was emptying trash cans in this building. Today, Forbes magazine is calling him one of the most innovative thinkers in financial technology. Harvard Business School wants to write a case study about his algorithms. And Apex Financial just recommended our platform to every company in their portfolio. More applause, but Victoria continued. Danny's success isn't remarkable because he rose from janitor to CTO. It's remarkable because he was always brilliant. We just weren't looking in the right places. Sophia raised her hand from the front row. Ms. Victoria? Yes, sweetheart. Can I tell them about the listening thing? Victoria smiled. Go ahead. Sophia stood up on her chair, suddenly addressing 300 adults with the confidence of someone who'd never learned to be intimidated. My daddy says the best way to fix something is to listen to it first. Not with your ears, but with your... She patted her chest over her heart. With the part that knows when something feels wrong even if it looks right. She looked around the auditorium with serious 8-year-old eyes. That's what he did with the computer. And that's what Ms. Victoria did with Daddy. She listened with her heart part instead of just her eyes part. The auditorium was completely silent, 300 people hanging on the words of a child who somehow understood leadership better than most executives. And now, Sophia continued, Everything works better because people are paying attention to the right things. She sat back down, and the applause that followed was different somehow. Warmer, more genuine. Victoria cleared her throat, unexpectedly moved. Sophia just explained something that took me 20 years in business to understand. We've restructured our hiring practices to focus on problem-solving ability rather than pedigree. We've created innovation teams that include people from every department. And we've instituted what Sophia calls listening meetings, sessions, where anyone can present ideas, regardless of their job title. Marcus Chin stood up from his seat in the engineering section. I want to add something, he called out. Danny's optimization algorithms have been licensed by 17 major corporations in the past 2 months. But more importantly, his approach to collaborative problem-solving has transformed how our entire department works. We're not just writing better code. We're thinking more creatively about what code can accomplish. That's right, Victoria agreed. And that brings me to today's major announcement. The auditorium buzzed with anticipation. TechFlow Industries has been acquired. Gasps and murmurs rippled through the crowd. By us, Victoria continued, grinning. A consortium of employees, led by our technology team, has bought out our previous investors. We're now employee-owned, which means everyone in this room is a shareholder in our success. The applause was thunderous this time. Victoria had to wait several minutes for it to subside. Jonathan Apex made this possible by recommending us to his investment network, but he insisted on one condition. She looked down at Sophia. All major company decisions have to pass what he called the Sophia test. If an 8-year-old can't understand why we're doing something, we need to reconsider whether it's actually a good idea. Sophia beamed and waved at the crowd, Mr. Whiskers. Perched on her shoulder like a tiny advisor, the formal meeting concluded and people began to mingle. Victoria found herself standing near Sophia's science fair display. Watching employees from different departments collaborate on solving the puzzle Sophia had created, a simple coding challenge disguised as a game about helping robots find their way home. Danny approached, carrying 2 cups of coffee and wearing the slightly overwhelmed expression of someone still adjusting to being called sir by people who used to barely notice him. Regrets? Victoria asked quietly. About which part? Accepting the CTO position, becoming a shareholder, or letting my 8-year-old become the company's unofficial strategic advisor? Any of it. All of it. Danny watched Sophia explaining her robot puzzle to a group of senior engineers, all of them listening intently to her instructions. You know what I regret? Victoria waited. I regret that it took so long. Not for me. For everyone else who's brilliant and invisible because they don't fit someone's idea of what expertise looks like. We're working on that, Victoria said. The listening meetings are just the beginning. I know. And that's why this feels like more than a job change. It feels like coming home. Danny nodded. Like finally being seen for who I've always been, instead of who circumstances forced me to become. Sophia bounded over, Mr. Whiskers still perched on her shoulder. Daddy, Ms. Victoria, Mr. Henderson from accounting says my robot game is actually teaching people about optimization algorithms. Is that good? That's very good, sweetheart, Danny said, lifting her up for a hug. Does this mean I'm helping with the business stuff? Victoria and Danny exchanged glances. What do you think, partner? Victoria asked. Should we make it official? Sophia's eyes widened. You mean like a real job? Well, Victoria said seriously. Every company needs a chief happiness officer. Someone to make sure we're solving the right problems and treating people the right way. Think you're qualified? Sophia considered this with her characteristic gravity. I would need to bring Mr. Whiskers to all the important meetings. Non-negotiable, Victoria agreed. And Daddy would have to promise not to work so late that he forgets dinner. Deal, Danny said. And everyone would have to be nice to each other, even when the computers are being grumpy. Especially then, Victoria confirmed. Sophia nodded decisively. Okay, I accept. But I'm only 8, so I might need help with the big words. As the 3 of them stood together, surrounded by the hum of excited conversations and the warm glow of a company transformed, Victoria realized she'd found something. She'd been searching for her entire career without knowing it. Not just success, but significance. Not just profit, but purpose. Not just a business, but a family built from the most unlikely foundations. And in that moment, watching a former janitor explain complex algorithms to fascinated colleagues while his daughter planned improvements. To their corporate culture, Victoria Sterling finally understood what true innovation looked like. It looked like courage. It looked like listening. It looked like believing that extraordinary things could come from the most ordinary places. 6 months after the day that changed everything, Victoria Sterling stood in the kitchen of Danny Martinez's apartment, attempting to flip pancakes while Sophia provided running commentary on her technique. "You're thinking too hard about it," Sophia observed, perched on a stool beside the stove with Mr. Whiskers in her lap. "Pancakes like to be surprised. If you plan too much, they get nervous and stick to the pan." Sophia's right. Danny called from the living room, where he was reviewing code on his laptop. A Sunday morning ritual that had evolved to include Victoria's increasingly regular visits. Cooking is like debugging. Sometimes you have to trust intuition over logic. Victoria laughed, successfully flipping a pancake that actually looked edible. "Is this how you two solve all your problems?" "With metaphors and unconventional wisdom." "It works," Sophia said matter-of-factly. "That's how Daddy fixed the computer. And that's how you fixed the company. And that's how we all fixed each other." The simple truth of it stopped Victoria mid-flip. In the months since TechFlow's transformation, she'd given dozens of interviews to business magazines, spoken at conferences about innovative hiring practices, and fielded calls from CEOs wanting to replicate their success. But none of those conversations had captured what Sophia just articulated in a single sentence: they'd fixed each other. Danny appeared in the kitchen doorway, coffee mug in hand, wearing the relaxed weekend uniform of someone who no longer carried the weight of invisible exhaustion. "How are the pancakes coming?" "Better than expected," Victoria admitted. "Though I think Sophia deserves most of the credit." She usually does. They ate breakfast on the fire escape, Sophia's preferred dining spot, because she liked watching the city wake up below them. The morning sun painted everything in soft gold, and the sounds of weekend life drifted up from the street. Kids playing, neighbors chatting, the distant hum of traffic that somehow felt peaceful rather than chaotic. "Daddy," Sophia said between bites of syrup-soaked pancake, "can I ask you something?" "Always." "Are you happy now? Like, really, really happy?" "Not just pretending for Sophia happy." Danny set down his fork, considering the question with the seriousness it deserved. "You know what, sweetheart? I think I am. For the first time since Mommy died, I wake up excited about the day ahead instead of just trying to get through it." Sophia nodded approvingly, then turned to Victoria. "What about you? Are you happy or just successful? Because those are different things." Victoria nearly choked on her coffee. "Where did you learn to ask questions like that?" "From watching grown-ups," Sophia said simply. "Lots of them are successful, but they don't smile with their eyes." "You smile with your eyes now." Victoria looked at Danny, who was trying not to grin at his daughter's psychological insights. "You're right," Victoria said. "I am happy. Really, truly happy. I didn't even know what that felt like until you started listening with your heart part instead of your business part." "Exactly." Sophia beamed, satisfied with her analysis. "Good. Because Mr. Whiskers was getting worried about you." As they cleaned up breakfast, Victoria's phone buzzed with a text from Jonathan Apex. "Harvard wants to interview all three of you for their business school case study. They're particularly interested in Sophia's insights on organizational psychology. When can you schedule?" Victoria showed the message to Danny, who shook his head in amazement. "A year ago, I was invisible. Now Harvard wants to study my 8-year-old's management philosophy." "The world's catching up to what we already knew," Victoria said. "That wisdom comes in unexpected packages." Sophia, who'd been listening while supposedly focusing on her coloring book, looked up seriously. "Can I ask them why they want to put us in a case? Are we sick?" Danny explained that a business case study was like a story that helped other people learn, not a medical diagnosis. Sophia considered this thoughtfully. "Oh, like when I tell my friends how to solve the monkey bars by watching where they want to go instead of where they are." "Exactly like that." "Okay, but I want to make sure they tell the story right. It's not about Daddy being special or MS. Victoria being brave. It's about everyone deciding to pay attention to each other." Victoria felt that familiar flutter in her chest, the recognition that this 8-year-old consistently articulated truths that eluded most adults. "What do you mean?" she asked. Sophia set down her crayon and looked at both of them with the gravity of someone much older. "People aren't broken. They're just lonely. And when you stop being lonely, you remember how smart and good you already were. The fire escape fell silent, except for the gentle morning sounds of the city below. That's it, Victoria whispered. That's the real story. Later that afternoon, as Victoria prepared to head home, Sophia handed her a new drawing. This one showed the three of them sitting around a table, sharing a meal, with small hearts floating above their heads like cartoon speech bubbles. For your office, Sophia explained. So when you have hard days, you remember that you have people who think you're worth taking care of. Victoria looked at the drawing, then at the little girl who'd somehow become her moral compass, then at the man who'd taught her that brilliance and kindness weren't mutually exclusive. Thank you, she said, her voice thick with emotion she didn't try to hide. For what? For reminding me what really matters. Sophia hugged her legs fiercely. That's what families do. As Victoria walked to her car, Sophia's drawing carefully tucked into her purse, she thought about the Harvard interview request and all the other opportunities that had emerged from their unlikely success story. Reporters wanted to understand their disruptive hiring practices. Consultants wanted to package their innovative leadership model. Academics wanted to study their organizational transformation methodology. But none of those descriptions captured the simple truth that Sophia had articulated. They'd stopped being lonely and remembered how to pay attention to each other. That evening, Victoria hung Sophia's drawing next to her desk, right where she could see it during video calls and late-night strategy sessions. The drawing became a reminder that some stories aren't about business disruption or market innovation. Some stories are about three people who found each other at exactly the right moment and discovered that the most revolutionary thing you can do is create a place where everyone gets to be their best, most authentic self. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, that place becomes home. Now I'd love to hear from you. Where are you watching from today? Drop a comment and let me know, because your stories matter just as much as the ones I tell. If this story reminded you that extraordinary potential exists in the most ordinary places, please hit that subscribe button so you never miss another tale of unexpected heroes and second chances. Rate this story from 0 to 10 in the comments below and tell me, when was the last time someone saw your true potential before you did? Remember, the most beautiful revolutions happen quietly, one conversation at a time, one moment of recognition at a time. Keep listening with your heart. Keep looking for the brilliance that others might miss. And never underestimate the power of believing in someone whose story is just beginning to unfold. Until next time, stay curious, stay kind, and remember, sometimes the person who changes everything is the one everyone else forgot to notice.